Covering politics in New Orleans was as good as it got for Frank Donze. It was a high calling for him.
I think Frank represents really the best of what all of us that were at the Picayune through the years and were there at the end aspire to be.
Mid-'80s on, Frank Donze had more than 4,500 bylines in the Times-Picayune. Bylines. That's not to say he didn't contribute to a lot of other stories. That's a lot of stories. That's a river of great journalism.
I think his legacy is just one of knowing the city and caring about the city and just wanting the best, and again, using his ability as the City Hall reporter, kind of almost the dean of the City Hall reporters, to kind of just let people know what was really going on in New Orleans.
That's how you get to the truth. That's how you get to telling people what's really happening, is understanding the players and understanding where they came from and really living it. And he lived it.
Frank was of New Orleans. This was a New Orleans guy.
He grew up here, he loved the city. He also appreciated the New Orleans warts and all. He understood the personalities, he understood the neighborhoods and how things fit together and how one thing influences another.
I mean, he loved owning a beat. He loved being the guy who knew everything at City Hall and everybody at City Hall and who everybody at City Hall would come to.
Even when he wrote a harsh story about somebody, they continued to return his phone calls. And that's not an easy thing to do in daily journalism.
When it came down to it, everybody knew that he was going to be fair, and everybody knew that he was going to tell the story as straight as he could.
The thing about Frank is that at work, he always delivered, right? Like at work, he always came through on the story that like people wanted, that his bosses were expecting of him, or that the city wanted to read. He always delivered, never failed. You always saw him at work, and yet at his house, when you listen to Beth speak, when you listen to his daughters kind of like talk about him, he was always there too.
There was nothing he loved more than his girls, the bosses he called them, his wife Beth and his daughters Caroline and Victoria. And I don't know, got to check with the bosses. That's what he would say if he, had to work late or wanted to do something, or somebody wanted to do something with him.
Frank never aspired to go work for the Washington Post or the New York Times. He aspired to stay right here in New Orleans doing what he was doing, and that's covering the political and city life. And other people saw that he was dedicated, he was there for the long run.
The longevity was so important to the product we were able to put out and the way we were able to tell the story over and over again and over the course of many years. That was really important. It was one of the reasons it was hard when the Picayune in 2012 decided that that didn't matter, because I thought it mattered, and one of the people who taught me that it mattered was Frank.
Frank represented the thing that we really lost when that newsroom was shown the door in 2012. And I've equated it to burning down a library.
He would still talk to his replacements at the Picayune, at NOLA.com, and still give them numbers to call for people and tell them where to go.
I never held it against the person that took the opportunity that was created by his unceremoniously being let go after years of service.
Because I think for Frank, it wasn't about him, and it wasn't about the institution, it was about the city.
When people ask me for help, even if it's, I'll never turn them down. And I think that has a lot to do, that is, again, a direct result of having been around Frank Donze.
But then it didn't end. Then he went to the zoo, and I eventually went to the Advocate, and we just kind of kept right on going. And that, I think, that's just a testament to how it was meant to be. Corporate decisions weren't going to stop us, and they didn't.
I think he missed the paper. He really did. I think he was happy at Audubon, but he missed the paper.
The night Ray Nagin was convicted, we're at the Advocate, and we get a call from the zoo, Frank saying, "I'm coming over." And he walks in the newsroom, and the first words out of his mouth were, "Give me something to edit." And he, of course, old school, paper and pen, we print something out for him, hand it to him, and he sits down and he goes to work. And it just all felt right with the world, because he belonged on that story. It was his story, and he had mentored all of us, and it was the way it was supposed to be.
Frank was a great mentor to younger journalists that came through the Times-Picayune.
Gordon Russell, you know, the investigative editor at The Advocate.
Denny Monteverdi, he had Ramon Vargas, he had Philip Rucker, who's now the chief White House correspondent for the Washington Post.
You know, you look at Stephanie Grace, who learned to cover City Hall from Frank, and look at the career she's had as a columnist now.
His influence is out there, it's everywhere. It's absolutely in me. It's
A great newspaper is an instrument of democracy, and because people have more information to work with, they have more insight to work with, and Frank was one of the finest practitioners of that in his own colorful way. He did it. He did it at a high level for a long, long time.
It is decades of political history that he documented the first draft of, decades more that he mastered, and we should have had it for much longer, and we don't. And I think the city is worse off for it.
He was able to do that and have that incredible career, but also have the respect and friendship, you know, and undying love of the people that Frank does. You know, we could only hope to aspire in our lifetimes to be remembered in that way.
the best. There'll never be another. Such an honor to have been part of his world, really.
Ladies and gentlemen, accepting the Press Club of New Orleans Lifetime Achievement Award for Frank Donze. Please welcome to the stage his wife, Beth Donze.